A few months ago, we did an in-depth look at the art in Oblivion, and we explored all the different ways in which art and its place in the world was highlighted to the player. I got a few comments on that video asking about art in Skyrim, specifically paintings, and are there any? So the answer to that is no. There is a noticeable absence of paintings, portraits. Whether or not that makes sense is what I want to look at today. You see, the closest real-life comparison that we can make to the Nords of Skyrim are Vikings. And real-life Vikings weren't exactly known for putting brushes to canvases, but they did nevertheless make and put a lot of value on art. Vikings were skilled in woodwork, metalwork, and petroglyphs, and knowing this information, you now know where to look for art in Skyrim. So that is what we will be exploring today. Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelika, and I may have said this before, but the Elder Scrolls in themselves are works of art. So I think that with that, we are off to a pretty good start. A big part of the Art in Oblivion video was taking a look at how people in Cyrodiil decorate their homes, with paintings and with all the other types of art that we found in the world. So then how do people in Skyrim decorate their homes? In the more humble homes, such as the ones that we see in Riverwood or Falkreath, you will notice that there isn't a whole lot there. It will mostly be animal pelts nailed to the wall, probably for insulation, even more than decor purposes, and scattered all over the floors too. Around the place you will find animal horns containing candles for lighting and mounted animal trophies, that is, deer heads or horns, mud crabs, fish, all that sort of thing. In some places you can find berry wreaths. So far we haven't really mentioned anything that could really be considered art, unless you consider this to be art, but moving on. Other homes have these woven creations hanging on the walls, as well as woven rugs on the floors. As it turns out, the Viking women were particularly skilled weavers, so you will see a lot in terms of textile art in Skyrim. Ceramics and pottery can be found around the place also, beautiful and practical pieces for eating, drinking, and even storage. We will take a separate and deeper look at metalwork in this video, but I just wanted to mention that their weapons and the way that they are designed are worthy as art pieces to hang on the walls also. Back to textiles, in the richer homes and establishments, you will see higher quality rugs, tapestries, curtains, and even table runners. Some pieces are brightly colored with beautiful designs, really a whole separate art form if you know where to look. The richer homes also boast beautifully designed furniture, and this is where we really start seeing the artistic capabilities of the Nords of Skyrim. The wooden bed frames that feature animal heads and intricate carvings all along the headboards, the chairs that show similar carvings, the wooden beams in the interiors, also adorned with flowing carved designs. Depending on the city, you will also see beautiful designs and carvings in the stone walls. The beautiful woodwork is no joke in Skyrim, especially when you venture outside and find just how prevalent it is. The tops of the roofs in Whiterun again show carvings of animal heads on all sides, standing out above the carved motifs. You see this on boats too, whether it is again an animal head or a beautiful shape as a finish. And speaking of animal heads and animal motifs in general, you will see them literally everywhere in Skyrim. Just as real-life Vikings used animals as symbols of things like freedom, a connection with the divine, or strength, depending on the animal, the people of Skyrim incorporate this in their art for the same reasons. Whether they are fearsome dragons or hawks that can be seen as symbols of Kine, the chief deity of the Nordic pantheon, the designs are stunning and they really do justice to what they're meant to represent. You will mostly see this in stonework, the walls around a city, or in other cases in the form of statues. Animal motifs go all the way back to the ancient Nords, which we learn while exploring the tombs of all those who have long ascended to Sovngarde, or the unfortunate souls that still linger. You may sometimes see human faces in some of these structures, but deep below the ground, you will find history and even knowledge carved right into the walls. Another great example is the statue of Ysgramor. There may not be any paintings of Ysgramor hanging in the Hall of the Companions where they can admire him, but instead they can revere him by traveling to his tomb and gazing upon the marvelous stone visage left behind as a reminder of their once great king and founder of the Companions. Shrines are another example of the Nords' artistic capabilities when it comes to their places of worship and objects that symbolize the divines. As we've mentioned before, there are no paintings in Skyrim, none to depict a Jarl or High King, and perhaps that is because they do not follow the same ideas and shows of vanity popularized in Cyrodiil. They instead devote their creative energy to the divines and the act of worshipping them. First of all, you have the statues of the divines, such as Telos, which you can primarily find in the center of Whiterun and in several other locations across the land. During the events that take place while we, the player, are dropped into the world, Skyrim is in the midst of a civil war conflict, where one side has outlawed the worship of Telos, so take care when making your pilgrimage to one of his statues. We also see beautiful stone depictions of Dibella in her temple in Markarth, and Mara, the goddess of love, in her temple in Riften. Each of the divines has a shrine that gives a blessing, and each one is a beautifully designed symbol corresponding to its respective divine. If you're somebody that wants to carry a blessing with you always, you may wish to obtain one of the masterfully crafted amulets to the divines. Each amulet is a unique and intricate work of art that holds a lot of meaning and can get you in trouble, especially if you're not careful about where you're wearing it.
Look at you, wearing an amulet of Mara. Are you saying you're available?
Metalwork in general is where the Nords have shown themselves to be masters of their craft. There are brooches and belt buckles built into the nobles' clothing, which you will miss if you're not paying attention. You see all kinds of works, from the finer, smaller pieces like rings and necklaces that can be worn to boast your status or avail of a magical enchantment, to the beautiful and formidable iconic weapons forged by the most skilled blacksmiths in all the land. Like Yorland Greymane, the artist who uses the Skyforge as his canvas. And how about that Skyforge? The ancient forge is used to craft unique weapons and armor, but the structure itself is really something to behold. After looking at all of these things together, we can come to the conclusion that the Nords are themselves a really practical people who don't create art for the sake of art, but as a means to revere one of their Nord heroes, worship their divines, or protect themselves from the dangers of the world. It is rare to see decor in homes that is there for the sake of decor. Yes, some of the richer homes can certainly afford that luxury, but it doesn't seem like those people hold the same values as the Nords that are simply trying to survive in a complicated and perilous time and a harsh and unforgiving world. In Cyrodiil, art appears in the homes of even the less fortunate, and this kind of shows us that if they can afford it at all, they will indeed decorate their homes, even if that does mean surviving on the last loaf of bread for a week. What can be seen as a lack of art in Skyrim is really the lack of the presence of Cyrodiilic culture and customs. Because as we've seen it, art can be found everywhere, from the grandest of palaces to the darkest tombs far below the surface. What I will say, and again, this is in continuing our conversation that we often have in this channel, of course, Skyrim lacks in areas where they could really have expanded on a lot of things. We know that Nords are not the only people that live in Skyrim. In fact, you meet all sorts of people from all over Tamriel, including Imperials from Cyrodiil. It would be nice to see some Imperial influence in their homes, for example, such as a painting of their Emperor, or perhaps one of the tapestries that we've seen to be really common in Cyrodiil. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't bring some of that with them to Skyrim, and that's where I think we lose the cultural context and the richer world. I have said myself that I'm not really a fan of mods, but if this is something that really bothers you, there are plenty of mods that add all sorts of art, including paintings, to Skyrim, if that is something that you wanted to do. Despite all that, I still think Skyrim is beautiful. It is rather appropriate that most of what is deemed art or decor in the homes in Skyrim comes from nature, as I find that the exterior in itself is a work of art. The flowing rivers and the plant life surrounding them, the creatures that dwell in the forests, the night sky aurora borealis, with the soundtrack by Jeremy Soule playing in the background. It really is like walking through a painting. And that about covers it for our deep dive on art in Skyrim, which feels like it might be missing altogether, but if you really look into it, it's not. It's there. It's everywhere. Just no paintings. That's still a thing. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. As always, thank you guys so much for all of your support, and I'll see you all next week. Be seeing you. Bye!